All right, sports fans, how's everybody out there doing? William Martin coming at you one more time here on YouTube with another edition of the 300 Pounds of Sports Knowledge Podcast. The only reason that somebody should be surprised that Texas A&M decided to fire head football coach Jimbo Fisher would be the fact that he is still owed more than $75 million on his contract. But A&M school officials had seen enough. And in spite of the fact that Fisher led the Aggies to a blowout win last night at home over Mississippi State, Jimbo was given his walking papers today. Now, in 5+ seasons in College Station, Fisher's record was 45 and 25, while he was only 27 and 21 in the SEC, with the exception of going 9 and 1 in 2020. The Aggies were mediocre under Fisher, and the folks in College Station simply don't want to hear that word. Now, giving the fact that Fisher got a 10-year deal for 75 million in 2017 when A&M was able to lure him from Florida State where he won a national championship, there were certain expectations there. And then, you factor that in with Jimbo getting a 10-year extension 2 years ago when A&M was afraid of losing him to LSU. But at the end of the day, I really think that Jimbo just got too comfortable in College Station. And I think the job security, the length of the contract, the amount of money, it's one of those where he didn't have to really work for his supper, if you will. And typically, regardless if it's coaches or players, when they're on the 1-year deal that they're seeking that extension, they seem to go out there and do things a little bit different. Jimbo was too comfortable. And you can't be comfortable in the SEC. The SEC for football is a different dog because you look at it. You look at the two top guys right now, if you will, in that great conference. You got Nick Saban, who's been doing it for a long time at Alabama. Then, of course, you got Kirby Smart at Georgia. These guys are relentless. They're consistently out there getting those top five classes. They're consistently going out there and dominating every single Saturday, and they're doing it like their jobs are on the line. And this is a reason why, they're having the success that they're having. And this is why, so many other schools within that great conference are consistently changing head coaches. But nonetheless, during Fisher's time at A&M, he was never able to close that gap on Auburn, LSU, and Alabama in the SEC West. And of course, no, SEC championships, no trips to the SEC championship game. The folks in College Station don't want to hear that because A&M's facilities are second to none in the country. Okay, there's a lot of money there for NILs for kids, and we've seen Fisher consistently get top 5 recruiting classes there, but they have not lived up to the expectations. And of course, at the end of the day, that falls into the lap of the head coach. Now, the folks at A&M, they want their program to be on the national scene. But when you think about A&M being a consistent top 10 or top 15 program, excuse me, that goes back to the days of the Southwest Conference, which was nearly 30 years ago. A&M has not won a conference championship since they won the Big 12 in 98, and they haven't been to a conference championship game since they got back to the Big 12 championship game in 99. So it's one of those where since joining the SEC back in 2012, A&M wanted that SEC money. They wanted to get out of the shadow, excuse me, if you will, of Texas, and they wanted to write their own history, to say the least. But at the end of the day, A&M has been and will continue to be right now, at least, a mediocre football program. And I say that from the standpoint they're a school you can consistently plug in to go 7-5 or 8-4, and that's going to be it. And I mean, at the end of the day, this is also the downside of life in the SEC. And of course, in that SEC West right now, and then of course, the divisional format is going to leave the SEC next year once Texas and Oklahoma join the league. But nonetheless, you got to sit up there and you got to deal with Alabama every year. You've got to deal with Auburn every year. You've got to deal with LSU every year. And say Fisher was brought in to be that guy to go toe to toe with Saban, and he's only gotten the best of Saban once since he became the head coach at Texas A&M. And again, you look at Fisher's record within the conference: 27-21, and only in 2020, the COVID year, did they have that breakthrough. 5-3 in the SEC in 2018, 4-4 in 2019, 4-4 in 2021, 2-6 in 2022, and honestly, you could say that the clock was ticking on Jimbo Fisher going back to last year. Didn't get started on the right foot. They lost in their second game at home to Appalachian State. They were 3-1 before the wheels fell off. They lost 7 straight games. And I mean, it was a who's who. They got blown out by Mississippi State. They lost at Alabama. They lost to South Carolina. Lost at home to Ole Miss. Lost at home to Florida. Lost on the road to Auburn, and then they finished up with wins against UMass and LSU. But nonetheless, the folks at College Station were not paying for a mediocre head coach. And of course, it carried over to this year as the Aggies are currently 6-4. They're 4-3 in the conference. They're not even going to come close to, competing for the SEC championship. And I think, honestly, I think the writing was on the wall for Jimbo after, losing 3 out of 4. They were 4-1 at one point, excuse me, but losing at home to Alabama, then going on the road the following week to Knoxville and losing to Tennessee, beating South Carolina, and then losing on the road at Ole Miss last week. That kind of did it in for his fate, if you will, at Texas A&M. Now, of course, the folks in College Station, they were paying for the Florida State version of Jimbo, and they didn't get it. And again, the ACC is totally different from the SEC because in 8 years in Tallahassee, Jimbo was 83-23 while he went 48-16 in the conference. There's no off Saturday in the SEC. If you don't come to play, you can lose to Vanderbilt. That's how deep that this league is. And of course, you got to try to keep up with the Joneses in that league, the Alabamas, the Georgias. And it's one thing to keep up with them on the recruiting trail, but keeping up with them on the recruiting trail and winning on Saturdays are two different things. And I think that's what ultimately did Jimbo Fisher in at Texas A&M. So I think at the end of the day, Jimbo is going to coach again. It might not be right away in 2024. You never know. There could be a school out there that could figure out, hey, you know what? He's our guy. He just had a bad run. Let's get him. Let's get this thing turned around. Let's get him in here. But nonetheless, I think Jimbo takes at least a year off, in my opinion, and relaxes. He's got plenty of reasons to relax. A&M owes him first and foremost $19 million within the next 60 days, and then he gets more than $7 million payout yearly until the contract is done in 2031. So he's got nothing to rush about. But nonetheless, I think he's going to sit back at least for the next year and take it easy. But I do think he's going to coach again. A&M's going to go out there and they're going to try to swing for the fences and try to get themselves another big name hire to be their head coach. Of course, there's rumors that A&M could focus on Dan Lanning at Oregon, who has done a solid job in his brief tenure there. I'm not sure if he'd want to go back to the SEC after being the defensive coordinator at Georgia. He's got things going well at Oregon. And of course, Oregon is about to transcend, if you will, to life in the Big Ten. But nonetheless, uh, there's no pressure for Dan Lanning at Oregon, and there'd be a lot of pressure for him at Texas A&M. Will he be up to it? I'm not sure. But for Texas A&M, it's still going to be life in the expanded SEC because you got to deal with Texas and Oklahoma next year. And of course, these were two teams that you were more than willing to escape when you left the Big 12. We've still got Alabama. You still got Auburn, who's improving under Hugh Freeze. LSU. You got Georgia. You got Tennessee. You got Florida. So again, there's really no off day or no off Saturday, if you will, in that league. So whoever Texas A&M hires, they got to be a home run. But then on top of that, they have to find a way to live up to the expectations that come with winning in the SEC and also what the folks want you to do in College Station. At the end of the day, A&M is still a good job. Don't get me wrong, but you've got to win. And the thing is like we've seen them fire coaches for winning, but not winning enough because Jimbo Fisher got a lot of money, and his win loss record was right up there with Kevin Sumlin. And then, of course, it was Mike Sherman and Dennis Franchione. They really haven't had the success that they've wanted since the days of RC Slocum. And again, it's one of those with the mega conferences. It's better. It depends on where you're coming from on this. Do you want to be a big fish in a small pond, or do you want to be a small fish in a big pond? And this is what some of these schools are doing when they're chasing the money. And things have not been the same for them since going to these mega conferences. You look at Texas A&M and the SEC, Miami and the ACC, and I could just go on and on and on. But nonetheless, Jimbo was brought to College Station with high expectations, and at the end of the day, he just didn't live up to them. I mean, look, A&M's 6-4 right now. They're probably going to, even if Jimbo was there, they probably beat Abilene Christian. Next Saturday, you could pencil them in for 7-4, and then the following Saturday at LSU at Death Valley. So more than likely, we're talking about a 7-5 team heading into their bowl game. If they won that game, they're 8-5. If they lost that game, they're 7-6. And again, the folks in College Station simply don't want to hear that. So obviously, Texas A&M knows that they have to be willing to pay big money to get another coach, and you know that the school has money if they're willing to pay Jimbo all of this money to go away and then still turn around and get themselves a big name head coach. So the head coaching carousel in college football has begun. I don't think it ends with Jimbo Fisher. Of course, we just saw Boise State move on from their head coach today as well. I'll touch on that later in the week. But nonetheless, I think this is going to be an interesting coaching cycle, and A&M just kickstarted it. So let's see what's next for the folks in College Station with their next head coach, and let's see where Jimbo Fisher lands on his feet. I think he will get another job. It's not a matter of if, it's more a matter of when. But nonetheless, win or lose, you got to produce on Saturdays in college football. And if you don't, these are the results that could happen. So, folks, that is going to wrap it up. And as always, I want to take this time out to thank you for tuning into the 300 Pounds of Sports Knowledge podcast here on YouTube. I want to take this time out to thank all of you fine folks out there for tuning in. And if you have not already, please feel free to subscribe to this channel. Now, if you're on the X, formerly known as Twitter, please feel free to follow me at 300 Pounds of Sports. And like I always say, if you follow me, it'll be my pleasure to follow you right back. There's also the sports discussion group on Facebook at the Sports Depot 365. Now you can check it out. Drop a line to be a part of one of the better sports debating sites going on social media. So once again, fine folks, my name is William Martin, and I am signing off. And I'm saying take care and have yourselves a wonderful day.